School was never built to make you successful. It was built to make you compliant. So that's why I decided to homeschool instead. My parents pulled me out of public school 4 years ago, but there are some things I wish I knew before I started homeschooling. Things that would have saved me years of frustration down the line. And so today, I'm going to share those things with you. And make sure to stick to the end to find out the biggest reason why I should have started homeschooling earlier. Let's get straight into it. So the first thing I wish I knew before I started homeschooling was to start early. The earlier you start something, the better. And I feel like we have to remind kids of that fact all the time. For example, at the beginning of my homeschooling journey, I would say like 4 years ago, I've always wanted to start a YouTube channel, documenting my homeschooling journey and my growth. Imagine where I would be if I had started 4 years ago. I would have shown you my entire process without having to talk about what it used to be like back then, which would have been much more helpful to you. Not only that, when you start early, it gives you more and more time to develop the skills to get better and better at things. So I feel like if you're a homeschooler or a parent that's homeschooling your child, I would remind them to start early in doing the passion that they want to do. And homeschool children have the opportunity to learn anything that they want early. So it's always just better to start now instead of waiting down the line thinking, oh, once I'm prepared or once I learn more about something, then I'm going to step into the field. No, it's just best to start it now and to get better as you take action and as you keep going and you keep doing it over and over again. If I had this mindset back then, I would have started my YouTube channel earlier. If I had this mindset back then, the book that I published last month might have been published 2 years ago. We might have thought of the idea and started working toward the book earlier. So whatever idea that you have right now, just get started on it immediately. Don't even think about it. Just step into it, take action, and then figure it out later. Because the last thing you want to have is regrets. The second thing I wish I knew before I started homeschooling was to build my own routine. Remember that homeschooling isn't an excuse to do nothing just because you don't have a real life teacher in front of you. It's a chance to design your own system, whether you're the parent or the child. It means being deliberate and scheduling out certain tasks that you have to get done for the day, instead of just going by the seat of your pants or whenever you feel like it. In the beginning year of my homeschooling journey, while I did get my tasks done throughout the day, I feel like I wasn't as organized in getting it done. I was sort of like, let me do a bunch of work for the next 3 hours. And then once I finish that work, I'll switch to the next subject, rather than breaking it up evenly so I have them all completed throughout the day. I overwhelmed myself because I was doing things at different times and it was hard to track. But once I did create a schedule and I started following it, it became easier for me to set up a routine where I could do things both on time and without burning myself out. So I would say setting up a routine and a clear routine that's realistic that you can follow is very important when you're starting homeschool. And the third thing I wish I knew before I started homeschooling is that no one is coming to save you. And this is more of like a mindset thing, I would say, for older teens that are homeschooling. Why I say this is because when you're homeschooled, you realize that while your parents are looking over your tasks and they're here to help you and guide you in the right direction, ultimately, you're in charge of steering your own ship when it comes to your education and what you want to do later on in life. So I feel like the sooner you realize that, the better it will be for you in the long run. Because you start to realize that as you develop through your teen years and even enter adulthood, you have to develop the willpower to discipline yourself to do your own work. You have to be able to regulate yourself, whether it's doing your own routine and following it to a T, or making sure that you start early doing the passion that you want. And I know this might seem a little harsh, but the truth is, when you're growing up, you're not always going to have your parents watching you or regulating each thing you have to do throughout the day. So I would say homeschool is the biggest teacher of this, because as a homeschooler, it's kind of up to you to discipline yourself. It's not like you're around kids or like multiple teachers that will write you up or report you if you do anything wrong. If I find myself off task, my parents aren't always going to remind me to get off my phone or to focus and do my work. It's up to me to make sure I get my work done. If I don't learn what I learn, my future self will be impacted down the line. And it's actually a very freeing idea once you begin to understand this, because you realize that your life is actually in your hands. You get to steer your own ship. And I feel like homeschooling really takes that to the extreme, because you're in charge of yourself. You become more independent, especially as a teen homeschooler. But what about the big surprise? What is the biggest thing no one told me about homeschooling that if I had known before, I would have joined earlier? This is the answer. Homeschooling is secretly training you to become an entrepreneur. And most people in school never learn entrepreneurship until they become an adult. What I realized is that the biggest thing homeschooling does is that it teaches you self-discipline. For my homeschool journey, my parents weren't on me 24/7. They still had to do their own work. Me and my siblings had to make sure that we had our work done without our parents constantly telling us to focus every second of the day. Because of the way my parents designed their homeschooling curriculum, they taught us that we were responsible for our own lives and that we're only hurting ourselves if we don't learn the things we need to learn for the future now. Not to say we were always on task. Of course, if there were times we went off task, they would discipline us by the end of the day, ask us why we didn't do our work and stuff like that. They still guided us, but for the most part, during the full day, we had to be disciplined enough to do our own work. And they made sure to instill that discipline inside of us. So I'm grateful for my parents for doing that. But this got me thinking that if you can set up homeschooling in such a way where you teach your child to discipline themselves, then not only do you not have to monitor them that often throughout the day, but they're going to carry on that skill into the fields that they want to learn later on. So they'll become better at learning, growing, and developing. And all of those aspects are important for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship requires self-discipline. And so does homeschooling. So you can see how those two work hand in hand. And better yet, if your homeschool is based around learning things that you will use to build your own business, then I would just think of homeschooling as early business school. Because you're both starting early, you're developing a routine that would allow you to stay focused, and you're realizing that no one is coming to save you because you are the guardian of your own ship. And those were the top things I wish I knew before I started homeschooling. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.